you think this will be the year that they start to like push up the table and like, you know, be in the conversation for a top 6 push.
We're going to look at the players that have to be in your team.
One for Leeds in particular that stood out for me was Dan James, because he is listed as a midfielder.
It doesn't feel like he's going to be an EFL player next season. Hello guys, and welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled, and I'm joined by Conor Keane this week. Conor, how are you getting on?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Because we are going to discuss... I've just ignored the question there. I'm very good. Cheers, mate. I'm very good. We're going to discuss this week the new Fantasy EFL football game. We're going to look at the players that have to be in your team. We're going to look at the players that are in our team and the ones to watch this year. We've got a Sportsman League for you to join as well. There's a lot of pride to play for in that, so go down below and join that. But let's get into the episode, Conor. Let's discuss the rules a bit, because it's a bit different from FPL, isn't it? Instead of 11 aside, it's just 7 aside, max 2 players per club, and it's across all 3 divisions. Is that going to affect how you're managing your team this year?
Yeah, I mean, when the game launched, I think was it last week? This time last week it launched. I was quite surprised to see there was only 7 players, especially when you have 3 divisions to cover. But obviously, it makes you have to be that much more careful and, like, you know, smart about how you play this and the kind of players you have to select. So I think you've got to really, like, you know, do your research before you have your final team for a couple of weeks' time.
There's also no prices on any players, which is completely opposite of FPL. It seems like this is going to be a week-to-week, change your team every week, get whichever players in, look at the fixtures. That's the way to go about this game, right? Especially
when you don't have the transfer cap that you do with Fantasy Premier League as well. You can make as many changes as you want, which on paper sounds really good. So I think you'll have people very invested week by week, looking at the fixtures, looking who's done well so far, who could maybe step up this week. You know, I think plenty of opportunities are here for this game. And
you also pick 2 clubs each game week that you think are going to win their games. You get more points if they win an away game, so that's also a chance to look at the fixtures and try and pick a couple of teams to win. The point scoring is similar to FPL: goals, assists, clean sheets, all rewarded, but defensively there's also points for interceptions and clearances, so maybe more of a chance for those brute force centre-backs to pick up some points as well. Yeah,
I mean, especially for those who love their stats and always like use the likes of FBref and other sites like that, you know, you can get very like deep down in sort of like the stats to see who's been doing well for interceptions and stuff like that. Very niche stats compared to like Fantasy Premier League, but obviously if points are there to be had, you know, there's gains to be had here.
And we're going to now look at some of the players. We're going to start with the Championship, go through the positions, then do League 1 and League 2 as well, try and find some gems. Let's start with some Championship goalkeepers. Conor, you're a connoisseur of the Championship, or you were as a Birmingham City fan. Any goalkeepers that have caught your eye over the last few years, or ones that you'd think about including?
After last year, for me, the top number 1 is going to be Alex Palmer. I think whenever I appeared on like Sportsman Untitled last season, and West Brom came into the conversation, I was always saying how much they impressed me defensively and how structured and organised they were. Obviously, he kept 18 clean sheets in the league last year, and Albion under Carlos Corberán, they'll be pushing for a similar sort of high aiming finish this year, and he's probably one of the better goalkeepers in the league. I think shot stopping, I think there are things to be improved, but I think there are other parts of his game, like sort of his distribution and his handling from, like, you know, wide areas, are very good. And I think he's definitely one that you should definitely look at for if you want to go with a Championship goalkeeper this term.
With goalkeepers, are you looking for one of the top teams in order for clean sheets, or are you thinking go for a keeper that might make a few more saves and get points that way?
I mean, usually, this is like, you know, just referring to like Fantasy Premier League for previous experience here, I would tend to go for one who's expected to keep clean sheets, but then someone who either has a good penalty save record or who will go and, like, you know, be forced to make a lot of saves because they will add points. So I like to freshen it up, and especially, you know, seeing as you can make as many changes you like, I think that sort of approach will change week on week.
I think Illan Meslier at Leeds got the most clean sheets in the league last season, 19. They're going to be up there again, so he's potentially a good option. But the one that caught my eye was Victor Johansson, who was and has been incredible for Rotherham United over the last kind of few seasons, made so many saves. Now he's moved to Stoke. You'd think they're going to be a hell of an improvement on Rotherham, what they did last season. I think he could be a decent pick and a low percentage as well.
Yeah, I think with sort of like the early transfer businesses conducted in the Championship, I think that's one of the ones that's been most impressive, because immediately it adds some strength to a Stoke backline, you know, backline and area where they weren't very good last year. And I think having someone with that kind of experience who is still like a couple steps to go on in his own development, I think that'll be huge for them this year, and I think he could be one to look out for.
Let's move on to the defenders from the Championship, and I don't want to just talk about Leeds all the time, but the highest selected defender in the Championship is Ethan Ampadu, also sometimes plays in midfield, which is a massive bonus when it comes to fantasy games. They've also signed Joe Rodon as well on a permanent deal. Those two have kind of caught my eye if we think Leeds will keep clean sheets. However, Daniel Farke's team, not necessarily the most solid defensively, especially when up against kind of pacey, creative forwards. What about you, Conor? Who have you seen in the Championship defensive market?
One that I think is worth going for is potentially Luke Ayling.
Okay.
He surprised me last year in just how kind of, not only sort of like once he got his loan move to Middlesbrough was he quite good defensively, but also over the course of the season he did rack up a decent amount of assists as well. And I think obviously if you're looking for differentials in those sorts of positions to help you, score big on a game week, I think he could be one to potentially keep an eye out for and track, especially with how his season starts.
If you're looking for attacking returns from fullback as well, Ryan Giles is one I've picked out at Hull, left wing back, left back. Not sure how Hull are going to get on this season with some of the business they've done is my one concern. But he is a great player and he's a great fullback. He's usually on set pieces. He can get crosses into the box. It feels like a great outlet for Hull and someone who could get a lot of points in.
Well, the term wand of the left foot is used quite a lot in football, but he certainly has that. And, throughout a game, he normally gets a lot of good crossing opportunities as well. It's just then on the attacking players that are in the box to attack them. But, with the deliveries that he can put in, there's going to be so many chances for the forwards in that team.
We already touched upon it slightly with Ampadu, but the out of position players are ones that can often offer big points. And one I noted down here is Taylor Gardner-Hickman at Hull. He's been listed as a defender. Now, he usually plays in midfield or at right back. I think he'll be used more in midfield this season. He's only been selected by 0.1% of people so far, so it feels like he could be a real hidden gem at this moment in time, although his attacking output isn't huge.
Yeah, it's just one of them with Bristol City that seems to come around every year. It's like, you think this will be the year that they start to like push up the table and be in the conversation for a top 6 push.
They'll be between 10th and 15th, won't they?
Yeah, more than likely. That's always how it seems to be. Sorry, Bristol City fans. But yeah, Gardner-Hickman, I remember catching quite a few of his games at Albion, and whether he was at right back or in midfield, he did look like quite good, especially like in attacking areas. But like you say, if the output's not there, he might be seen as a bit of a risk. So I think in this case, you might be worth waiting to see how he performs in the first few weeks, see if there is like a goal or assist here and there, and then maybe readdress that like maybe later end of August.
Let's move forward up the pitch to the more exciting areas. Let's be honest, we want the goals, we want the assists, we want the excitement. Championship midfielders, who's caught your eye?
For me, it's Gabriel Sara of Norwich. Double figures, I think, 13 goals, 12 assists last season. He was one of the most exciting players in the Championship last year, and Norwich will be hoping for a lot more joy, I think, this year. Obviously, a new manager is in the building, obviously with the brief to probably take them to that next step of hopefully either getting to a playoff final or possibly even like promotion itself. And I think he is going to be key for them once again. And I think we can see similar numbers from him in both goals and assists this year.
Is it worth us mentioning Sammy Szmodics at this moment in time? It doesn't feel like he's going to be an EFL player next season, even though, if he is, he's probably got to be in your team. 27 goals.
Yeah, you'd think so. Obviously there's a lot of concern off the field for Blackburn right now, but obviously there was a lot of concern for Blackburn off the field last year, and he still managed to have an incredible season, like the most prolific goal-scoring season of his career. I think that sort of momentum, if he is still in the EFL next year with Blackburn, I think that'll be key, and he could probably expect another fruitful season in front of goal. But I think the task this year for him, in terms of like the goal burden, is going to be much tougher, and it's a case of a mental test for him of how he deals with that. I think right now, obviously, there's talks underway, isn't there, of like Ipswich Town coming in for him. I think at this stage, I think it's one to hold fire on and maybe readdress like later in the window if anything changes.
One man who I'm not holding fire on, going straight into my team, that we will come on to later, both of our teams, by the way. Callum O'Hare moved from my team Coventry. He's gone to Sheffield United on a free. he had a bad injury over the last couple of years, ACL injury. He came back, scored a decent amount of goals, then kind of lost his way in the team. He's now at Sheffield United. He's got his kind of big move, probably wanted to be in the Premier League, but he's still in the Championship. He's going to love being the creative force in that team. He's going to love playing with, Hamer, Kiefer Moore could link up well with him. I think Sheffield United are going to be good this season. I think O'Hare's going to flourish under Chris Wilder. So I'm interested to see how he gets on. What about any Leeds players for you making it into these kind of midfield positions?
Well, this is something that always is a huge debate in like fantasy games. It's like, you see it in the Premier League, and obviously you've seen it now in the EFL, where you'll have players who are in the same position, but yet they are classed in different areas of the pitch in the game. So for Leeds in particular, that stood out for me was Dan James, because he is listed as a midfielder and obviously plays as a winger or an inside forward these days, if you want to go with that term. And he got a decent amount of goals and assists last year, 13 goals, 7 assists. Only selected by 3.8% of players though. Obviously there were times last season where he was more of a bench player coming off the bench, but obviously you look at those returns, you think if you can rely on him to basically have a strong attacking output, even when he has like a 30-minute run out in a game, I think he could be a nice, decent selection to go with.
When you compare him, and you mentioned him in the same breath as Somerville, who is a forward in the game, that's kind of where you're looking at the differerentials, and Somerville's been selected by, I think, 35-40% of people at the minute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's 40% probably rise as the season nears as well. A lot of people are going to go for Somerville, so it's like, trying to think how can I maneuver my mate in a league or something. How can I outscore him this week? And it might be things like that, having an attacking player in midfield, and then obviously going for more attacking. But I mean, you could even have James and Somerville on the same team. It's nice double pronged approach to have. So yeah, I think it's all about being smart and trying to go week by week.
There's a few players in relegated teams as well that have obviously going to catch the eye this season. Luton Town we haven't mentioned yet, but they're probably going to go strong. Heath Trong, someone you could potentially consider?
I mean, you were saying you were surprised to see him on this list beforehand, but the reason being is last season, obviously Luton didn't have the season that they probably would have wanted in the Premier League. Obviously, it was tough for them to stay up. He didn't start getting into the team starting till probably mid to late point of the season. But when he started to build up his confidence, and he managed to score 4 goals as well for the Hatters. But obviously going back to his previous time in the Championship with Birmingham City, the season before, he ended the season with 4 goals and 5 assists, and obviously that was a Birmingham team that was low-end Championship, just had the brief of staying in the league. I think Luton will have high hopes for this Championship season, especially with the squad that they have. And obviously they will look to build on that so that they can try and return to the Premier League at the first attempt. I think Chong, with a year of Premier League football under his belt, will be more tailored now to being a key figure for them in the Championship. So I think we could see high returns from him this year. And at the moment, he's only 1.3% selected. So I think he could be a one to watch kind of thing as well.
I think this is where the disappointment comes in of only being able to select 2 or maybe 3 midfielders if you change your formation, because in a 4 or 5 man midfield, those are the sort of players that you'd love to include, whereas it feels quite limited in terms of only having a couple of names we can maybe throw in there. Let's move on to the strikers, because the Championship's full of them. Somerville we've already mentioned. I'll throw in Josh Sargent, because he was injured for the first half of last season, then came back and scored 16 goals in 28 games. Was clearly one of the best strikers in the division. We expect Norwich will be slightly better this year than they were last year, even though they made the playoffs under this new manager. And I think he's a very easy pick in my eyes. Any other strikers for you, Conor?
For me, I'd go with, I always don't know how to say his name, but the Middlesbrough striker Emmanuel Latilath.
Yeah.
He had a strong season, and obviously Middlesbrough will be hoping for a much stronger season themselves, and I think they'll be pushing for top 6 this year. He was very good last season, got a good amount of goals, and I think that he will be more developed now to be a much bigger presence in that team. And I think that he can probably smash last season's total, because I think Middlesbrough should be up there, and I think the chances that he will receive, I think more often than not he'll put them away. So I think he will be, like Sargent, in the conversation for the Golden Boot. So they are 2 players definitely to look out for.
I think he's a great shout for the Golden Boot. I'll also throw in Ellis Sims. Found his feet after a really slow start at Coventry last season. Basically didn't score for the first half of the season. Couldn't get anything going. Second half of the season, he ended with 13 league goals. I think 6 in the FA Cup run as well. He was looking great by the end of the season, looked like a completely different player. I expect him to get near the 20 goal mark this season, and he'll be Coventry's number 9. And again, they should be a team that's in and around the playoffs. So that's our championship pick so far. Let's move down to League One, because of course this is a game where you can mix and match. You can do whatever you want, basically, the freedom to do. Goalkeepers in League One. I think Sam Tickle's an interesting one at Wigan. He's signed a new deal, I believe, this summer, and he's very, very highly rated. I also expect Wigan to go quite well this season. Corey Adai has joined Stockport from Crawley, again another team that could impress. What about you, Conor? Do we even know who Birmingham's number 1 is going to be at this point in time?
Well, this is the thing. It's like, at the moment, I'd probably lean towards and say that it'll be Bailey Peacock-Farrell, but obviously, that can suddenly change. There's still another week. Well, in 2 weeks, there's a week to go. Final pre-season game against West Bromwich Albion. Wait and see who starts there.
We have to steer well clear then of Birmingham goalkeepers.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, it's a good decision to have, where you have 2 goalkeepers who you think they could easily be the number 1. But I think right now, if you were to pick one of Birmingham's goalkeepers, it would be Bailey Peacock-Farrell. But even then, neither of them are going into my team, because you just can't call which one of them it will be. So I think the ones that we've mentioned already, I mean, Sam Tickle in particular, very, very good young goalkeeper. I mean, the fact that Wigan have been able to tie him down to a new deal is outstanding, and I think he'll be in for another great year at this level.
And the other man I want to throw into the mix is Arthur Nkonkwo at Wrexham. Obviously, they got promoted back into League One this season. I think they're going to be decent. I'm not sure if they'll be, one of the top promotion contenders this season. But he, again, last season was absolutely phenomenal, brilliant shot-stopping goalkeeper. I think he'll have a really good season, and they've got him back on a permanent deal as well. So one to watch there. Let's move on to the defenders as well, because there's a few goal-scoring ones. I mean, Carl Piergiani at Stevenage, he was brilliant for Steve Evans, and they were really near the top of League One last term. He got 4 goals last season, a great threat from set pieces, but I'm wary of throwing him in just because Steve Evans has left. He's now at Rotherham. I'm not sure they'll be very strong this season, so I'm going to steer clear of him, I think. What about you, Conor?
So the first one I had down was Alex Cochrane. I mean, obviously, Birmingham City alert again, but he was one of the new signings that we've made over the summer, left back from Hearts, and obviously comes with a good reputation, and also he was a product of the Brighton Academy, and obviously the talent that they've been producing over the last few years, is absolutely extraordinary. So there's high hopes for him. He's meant to be very good attacking, while also quite structured defensively as well. Obviously, he'll be fighting with Lee Buchanan for the left back spot, but in terms of attacking output, it seems that he'll be ahead of him in the pecking order. He got 4 assists in the Scottish Premiership last season with Hearts, and I think he could be one of them high-scoring points for assists this year in the League One.
A left back I want to keep my eye on as well is Cohen Bramall at Rotherham. I think he is a brilliant player. Every time I've watched him, he's been absolutely fantastic. I think he'll be getting set pieces into the box, obviously providing a lot of crosses for that Steve Evans style of football. So I think he could have a great attacking output. That game where they beat Cardiff 5-1 or 5-2 in the last game of the Championship season.
Yes.
He got 2 assists in that, and I think that might be a performance we see replicated quite a lot in League One. Ricardo Santos is a giant at Bolton if we're looking for kind of clearances and defensive actions, and Aidan Flint the same at Mansfield, even though I think they'll be a bit further down the table. Any more names, or is that it?
The other one I had was Michel Hellick for Huddersfield Town. Obviously there's still question marks whether or not he'll be here come the start of the season, or at least September, that is. But obviously, Huddersfield, they had a very, very disappointing year in the Championship last year, relegated, but he still scored 9 goals from centre-back at the Championship. So I think he could certainly be a huge goal threat in League One if he sticks around for the last year of his contract. So I think, he could be one to, definitely think about putting in your team, especially for goals from centre back.
They should be decent defensively as well, Huddersfield, I'd expect this season.
Yeah, under Michael Duff as well. I think that he'll try and add a lot more needed structure that they need, especially if they want to be pushing at the top end of the table, which on paper they should.
I've got a couple of League One midfielders I want to pick out. Davis Keeler-Dunn, 32 goal contributions for Mansfield last season. I know they got promoted, this will be a higher level, but that feels like, a shoe-in for your team potentially. If he's getting that kind of number again, he'll be in your team by the end of the season. Also, an interesting name, Chris Con-Clark at Peterborough. Peterborough obviously sold a lot of their key players this season. He's come in from Altrincham. He got 22 goals in the National League last season from midfield. He feels like he could be a rising star this season. So if you want to make a difference to your team compared to the others, he could be one to include.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously this is going to be his second stab in the Football League. And obviously, sometimes that's what it takes for a player to, go down and drop to like National League, develop their game so they're primed and ready to give, the Football League another go. I think he is one that should do, because there's no reason that Peterborough wouldn't have invested in him if they didn't think that he would make the step up. And obviously with the confidence that he would have gained last year, I think that should serve him well with Posh this year.
And Peterborough's success rate with those sort of players, I mean, look at their roll call of former players they've had and then sold on. He could potentially be the next one. Luke Berry also catches my eye just because of that relationship with Nathan Jones. He's been reunited at Charlton. I think when he was at Luton in the Championship, they were just kind of scoring goals for fun. I remember he scored 4 against Coventry in the FA Cup once. We lost 4-0. Luke Berry scored all 4. So he could do something similar at Charlton this season. Talk us through some Birmingham midfielders. Or anyone,
so obviously there was a question mark on Siriki Dembele, and the reason being is because it's something that held him back last year across, the flourish of managers that we had throughout the season, was his lack of urgency to track back and help out the team defensively. Very much a luxury player, I think. He's absolutely dazzling when he's on song. Like he's just magic to watch with the ball at his feet. Dances around players. But as things stand, I don't think that he will be the starting left winger in the Chris Davis system. So I think players you want to look at as a differential, if you want to look at Birmingham players, because obviously they are expected to be, top end of the league. Koji Miyoshi last year, if we keep hold of him, a Japanese international, 6 goals and 6 assists last year in the Championship. He's currently got
a relegated team. That's not bad, is it?
No, absolutely, and he's currently got the right side of the midfield locked down at the moment. He's going to be the nailed-on starter, I think, on the first game of the season if he's still here. Then the other 2 that I've listed as well are Willem Willemsen, new addition from
Willem Willemsen. Wow.
Willem Willemsen, yeah.
Is he Dutch?
No, he's Icelandic.
Oh,
Icelandic. He arrived, but he did arrive from the Netherlands, from Go Ahead Eagles in the summer, and he had 7 goals and 2 assists in the Eredivisie last year. Big, tall, 6'3", I think he is, but he's like an attacking midfielder, so he's added some much needed height to the team, but very technical as well for a big guy. So I think he could be one to watch at this level. And the other one that I had was someone who has experience in League One, and that is Mark Leonard, who spent the last 2 years at Northampton Town, obviously last season in League One. He got 5 goals and 6 assists, and one of the players that joined last week. And I think that he could be in for a very good season, especially in a team that is expected to dominate play more and obviously have a lot more joy in this league.
I think Birmingham obviously are a team to watch out for in League One. I think that's obvious. I think they should be featured in a lot of people's teams or selected as your team to win for the weekend. Obviously that's an added part of this EFL fantasy game. So let's move on to the League One strikers. Let's start by talking about Paul Mullin, because he's been selected by 20% of teams. Obviously a good goal scorer for Wrexham, we have seen, but he's stepping up again to League One. Would you be keen to throw him into your team at this point in time?
Yeah, I think so, because obviously when he joined Wrexham originally, he was ready. He was, I believe he'd just been promoted to League One, but obviously turned that down to play for Wrexham. And obviously back then, no one had even, questioned if he'd been ready to make the step up. So I think it doesn't really change now, even though it's a few years on. I think, he's an excellent player who just seems to be getting better each year he's been with Wrexham. And I think even if they aren't quite where they want to be this year in terms of the top few contenders, I still think there'll be plenty of goals for him to have this season.
Good point. I'm less keen on Mullin, but I don't know why that is. I just think, has he just been selected because of the hype around Wrexham and all of the interest? People just go, oh, Paul Mullin, I recognise him, I'll put him in, and maybe that's why the percentage is a bit high. I think there's better options elsewhere. There's better options in League One for me. I mean, Johnson Clark-Harris is back in League One. He scored so many goals for Peterborough. He's a former League One Golden Boot winner. Now he's at Rotherham. He liked playing for Rotherham before. I think Steve Evans can get the best out of him. If he can stay fit, I think he's going to score a decent chunk of goals this season. And also an outside one, Reece Healy at Huddersfield Town. I mean, he scored 20 goals, I think, for Toulouse. Then he got his move to Watford. Didn't quite work out there. Then he came, obviously, down to Huddersfield. I think if he can get a run of games going, he's clearly a decent goal scorer. But there's a massive elephant in the room, and I'll let you talk about him, because it's your man, Alfie May. He just scores goals, doesn't he?
Yeah, he just scores goals, doesn't he? Like, he's consistently scored over 20 goals in the 3 years he's had in League One so far. 23 last year for Charlton, who were around mid-table, I believe. And, Golden Boot winner. Obviously, Blues have been quick to, get him in because they just know at this level you're not going to find a better goal scorer. So I think in the system that he's going to feature in this year, there should be plenty of chances for him. So I think there's a good chance that he will probably rack up 25 goals or so this year.
He seems a very solid pick. Let's quickly run through a few names in League Two as well, and then we'll get to our questions at the end. Goalkeepers in League Two, I pointed out Conor Ripley at Port Vale and Craig McGilvery at MK Dons. McGilvery in particular, I don't know about you, Conor, but I'm quite keen on MK Dons this season. I think they're going to be very solid. I certainly expect them to take one of the automatic promotion spots, so picking up McGilvery might not be a bad shout.
No, it isn't. He's never played at the higher levels of the Football League, but when I have watched him, whether that be for MK Dons or Portsmouth or Walsall previously, I've always been impressed with him for the level that he's at, and I think that sort of figure in a team that will be aiming for promotion this year, I think it'll be really, really key. And I think he's very good as well. As you just run of the mill, in between the sticks goalkeeper for shot saving actions, and also just the way he commands his area as well.
I think the way this game is going to work is the fact that because more people support them and more people follow the Championship, the teams are going to be full of Championship players. So if we're looking down to League Two, whoever you pick, even if you feel it might be quite an obvious one, it's probably going to be a bit of a differential at this point in time. Talking of which, Chesterfield are actually favourites to win the league in League Two this season. Che Dunkley, one of their defenders who I've half got my eye on. Any other kind of League Two defenders who might tickle your fancy here, Conor? There was Mickey Dimitriou of Crew, good number of goals and assists last year. I think Crew, obviously, they exceeded a lot of expectations last year with their playoff run, and I think that this year they'll be hoping to try and match that. And I think if he's still here come September, I think we can expect another fruitful attacking return in goals and assists from him this season. Defenders scoring goals like that, I mean, it doesn't really change too much season to season, does it? So you'd expect him to be a key figure in the box and scoring from those set pieces.
And they're just worth their weight in gold, aren't they, for fantasy? They just are.
You need those defenders. Lawrence Maguire as well, an interesting one to keep an eye on, another MK Dons defender. He moved from Chesterfield to MK Dons. 3 goals last term, but again, if you think that they're going to go well, might be worth including. I've picked out another MK Dons player here in Liam Kelly. Crawley, he was brilliant last season. He only got 4 goals and 9 assists, which surprised me slightly, because every time I watched Crawley, he was so integral to them. I think he's going to be brilliant for a better team in MK Dons, so I'm expecting a better output.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's it was such a blow to Crawley to lose him, but obviously he's been lured to whatever MK Dons are trying to do. And obviously, as you say, a better footballing team, I think we could see. We were amazed by what he did last year. I think he could go even further this year in that team.
Double digits potentially for goals and assists, I think. Midfielders for League Two, have you got your eye on?
So one I have picked out in particular, and it's a former Birmingham player, is Dan Crowley of Notts County. 15 goals, 10 assists last year, and Notts County didn't quite, make the step up as I think they hoped they would. Obviously, compared to their fellow promoted team, Wrexham last year from the National League.
Williams leaving kind of
that didn't help. But even at the time of when he left, they weren't quite where I think they would have wanted to be going into the season. But even still, for a team just promoted from the National, they consolidated plays. But they also they had some good footballers. Obviously you had Macaulay Langstaff, who's now moved on to Millwall, Jody Jones as well, who we're going to touch on soon. But Dan Crowley, especially for the label midfielder in Fantasy EFL, I think 15 goals and 10 assists, you cannot ask for much more.
That is huge numbers. I saw that George Byers, by the way, he's gone to Port Vale. He's been selected by 5% of teams, and I feel like that's just because of the pedigree he's got from playing Sheffield Wednesday for a few years and just at the higher level. So potentially want to keep an eye on there. Let's talk about Jody Jones, because he's in as a striker, which is interesting because he made most of his starts from left wing back, I think, for Notts County, and broke the assist record, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, how often do you see a player get 24 assists just in the league? It's absolutely incredible. And then obviously he added 6 goals to that, so 30 goal involvements in a season as well. I just think, if you are trying to beat the people who are just, as you mentioned earlier, looking for the championship, household names kind of thing. I think Jody Jones is another one you just simply can't ignore for what he did last year, and obviously Notts County will be hoping for more success this year as a team, but individually I think he'll still bring that quality that just absolutely dazzled the league last year.
And with him playing at wing back for Notts County, there's always the chance that Stuart Maynard, who's the new manager, pushes him forward into one of the winger roles, and then even though he's listed as a forward, you're probably going to get even more attacking returns from Jody Jones there. There's also 2 Doncaster forwards. Joe Ironside got 20 goals last season for them and was a brilliant player. And then Billy Sharp is back at Doncaster Rovers. And do you just fancy that fairy tale of Billy Sharp? He's got the quality. Can he do it?
Well, I mean, obviously, age is definitely against him now, but even still, it's like, he's Mr. EFL, isn't he, Billy Sharp? He's...
But will he be Mr. EFL Fantasy?
Oh, it remains to be seen. I mean, I'm sceptical mainly because of the age, and obviously I think, I think he's clinging on for dear life of professional football right now. But I think the other one you mentioned, Joe Ironside, I think, if you're looking for a Doncaster player, I think he's the one to look for instead.
Right, we're going to wrap this up with a few questions. So, Conor, star name you simply have to include this year in Fantasy EFL for you?
It is Alfie May. Like, there's just, there's just, there's no one who, epitomises the term or like the phrase guarantees goals than him. Obviously, he's joining Birmingham at like sort of a rebuild, and obviously a new system, new style, new training, which everyone's been alluding to in pre-season, and obviously he's going to be the figurehead for at least a year or two, especially at this level. And no one guarantees goals in League One like he does. Over 20 goals in the last 3 seasons. He's just a natural born finisher, a poacher, and a player that Birmingham have lacked in recent years.
I'd like to say something different and be exciting, but I've also got Alfie May written down because I think he's, as you say, a goal scorer, but I'm expecting Birmingham to be so dominant in League One this season. They should win most weeks. They should score quite a few goals, and he should score most of them. If he gets less than 25, that's a disappointment in my eyes.
Yeah, it will be, because I think with the players that are being signed around him in attacking areas, like, he should not be short of service. And I think in a lot of cases, like some of the opponents they'll play, particularly home, I think home form will be critical this year, and I'm expecting a lot more joy at home at St Andrews than has been in a few recent years. So I think a lot of his goals should come at home, especially as well, with 18,000 season tickets currently sold, like the most in the last 13 years. And I think, we're expected to see the stadium packed out more often than not this year. So I think him feeding off that should really help him, and obviously help him past the 25 goal mark.
That's enough Birmingham chat, I think. Right. Let's look at the players, and a few you might have seen that are under 5% selection, so maybe the ones that have gone under the radar. Which are the ones that you like, that you've seen that are owned by fewer than 5% of people?
I can't remember the exact figure, but I know he was under 5%. But for me, he's down as a defender. It's Luke Leahy of Wycombe Wanderers.
Okay.
He kind of one of them, like similar to like Jody Jones, where he'd like flicker between 2 positions. So he'd either play in defence or he'd play in midfield. But last year for the Share Boys, he got 11 goals and 7 assists. Ooh. And I think, when we're talking about you need those good attacking returns from like defenders, like, he could be a defender playing in midfield, and obviously if he can deliver the same sort of figures this year, I think, we could be onto a winner.
That is a great pick. I've picked out, obviously we mentioned Josh Sargent before. I think he is also guaranteed goals in the Championship, under 5% owned. Sean Raggett as well, interesting one. I think he's at Rotherham now. Please correct me if I'm right.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he did move to Rotherham United, and I think Steve Evans is going to be a great defensive manager. I think Rotherham are also going to be pretty dominant in League One this season. He's going to be full of clearances. And also, Coventry's had you right. Loads of goals and assists last season, the most productive member of the Coventry team. I'm just a little bit concerned about his guaranteed minutes, given we've also signed Ephron Mason-Clark from Peterborough. But if he starts and he's getting a decent number of minutes, I think I'll wait a couple of weeks and then put him straight in.
I do find that quite surprising that he's under 5%, because obviously he's still got good numbers last year.
Did it on the big stage as well.
He did
in the FA Cup. Right, as I've already mentioned, you have to pick 2 teams every single week from up and down the Football League to win. if they're an away team and they win, you get more points. If they're a home team and they win, you still get some points. Basically, it's pick 2 teams to win. So, Conor, my question to you is, which teams are you going to be backing the most this season? You can only pick each team 5 times, so you can't just pick Birmingham every single week.
Shame. No. It's hard to say, really. I think, considering you can only have them 5 times, it's very hard. But I think Birmingham will be one to use for quite a few times. Another one I think as well will be Rotherham, just because I think at that level, you touched on it. You said that you're expecting both teams to be dominant. I agree. I think they'll both have a lot of joy, especially at home this season. I think they're two definitely.
Talking of which, though, would you be looking for those away wins and backing a Birmingham away from home? Is that going to be your tactic, or are you going to just play it safe for a relatively straightforward home win?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's cliche to say, but it's like, you've got to go to XX on a cold, windy afternoon or a cold, windy night in midweek. It's like, everyone says, oh yeah, League One, it's going to be tough when you've got teams that are going to, you're going to try and play it on the ground, play it neatly, and then you're going to just whack it over you and chase it down. I'm skeptical to just be like, we're just going to go in and this, that. So I think for right now, I think I'll be more confident backing home wins than away wins.
Interesting. I obviously talked about MK Dons. I'll be backing them quite a few times. Leeds in the Championship are going to be right up there, and Birmingham as well. Also Luton, I think, can have a very decent season. I think might be going slightly under the radar in terms of percentage picks as well. But it's time to reveal our teams for game week 1. Conor, I'll let you run through your team first while I get mine ready and explain your selections as well.
Right. Sorry, guys. This is the last time I mention us. Sorry, but I have gone with Birmingham to beat Reading. Reading are still quite in a bit of a mess off the field. Like, they kind of need their prospective takeover to go through. But even then, I think it'll take quite a bit of time for them to fix all the issues that have been happening over the last few years. I think first home game of the season, probably expecting a sellout crowd. I think they want to start as they need to go on. I think we're a good choice to beat Reading, to be honest. The second one I've gone for Norwich to beat Oxford away. Mm-hmm. Oxford United have done very well to be in this position, obviously in the Championship, did brilliantly in the playoff final, but I am still sceptical of them because, like Des Buckingham, he has a good coaching career, but from when he came in to the team last year on the back of Liam Manning's previous success, I think he did kind of coast off what Manning had done before him. I think from when he took over, I think their form was about lower mid-table. So I think that this step up now to the Championship, like, he's going to be really tested. And obviously we've already mentioned Norwich, talking about how we expect them to go better this year. I mean, say better, they got playoffs last year, but they'll be aiming for at least similar. And obviously the players that they have, especially the likes of Gabriel Sara, I think they could definitely have some joy down there.
I'll go through my 2 teams I've picked to win as well, and I have picked Coventry to win the first game, like you picked Birmingham. Basically, I think we're going to start this season much better. The team already looks to be mainly in place. I think we'll be close to the top 6, if not in it. And we're playing a Stoke team that I feel aren't settled. I don't think they're quite as prepared. I know they've signed Johansson. Again, they've probably made a few decent signings. But last summer, we talked about how good they'd had in the transfer window. And again, they had another disappointing season. So that's an away win. And what I've done for my tactic is pick teams to win away, because I want those extra points. And on that note, Blackpool are travelling to Crawley Town in their opening League 1 game. And Crawley, we've already said this, look like they're in real trouble. They've sold pretty much all of their best players. Mm-hmm. They're going to really, really struggle not to finish bottom, even though they were so good last season. So those are the 2 teams I've picked to win. Can I have your lineup for your first game in the players you've selected? And that's how we will finish. You can hopefully take some of our tips on board. You can ignore them if you want. Hopefully we've given you some added value here. So Conor, talk us through it.
So to start us off, goalkeeper, someone I've already mentioned, Alex Palmer for West Brom.
I've got Alex Palmer in goal as well.
There we go. We're on to something then. We're on to something.
So QPR are going to score 5 goals in the first game week then.
Yeah, no, in my look. Yeah, probably. And then to start off my defence, the player that I've already mentioned was the sort of like the dark horse under 5%, Luke Leahy of Wycombe Wanderers. I just think for his output last year, and obviously he's down as a defender when he can play in midfield, or when I say can play, he has played in midfield like a lot as well. Can't be overlooked. The other one I've gone for is Junior Firpo of Leeds United. He had 8 assists last season, and I'm expecting him to be, unchallenged. I don't think I don't think he'll be challenged for this spot. I think he'll have another good year, especially as like Leeds will try and hope this time around that they go up automatically. Avoid all the drama that came at the end of last season. Midfield, Gabriel Sara. I think that was a given how much we've talked about him. And then next to him, I've gone for Harrison Burrows, who at the time when I put him in, at the time that I put him in, he was a Peterborough United player. Now he's at Sheffield United. But
as a midfielder, though, a left back. You're just saying he's going to get loads of attacking returns.
He can play wing now, and especially I think with
Sam McCallum they've got as well at Sheffield United.
And Ephraim Mason-Clark's move as well. I think could that present an opportunity? Why am I talking about Ephraim?
He's at Sheffield United.
Yeah, I've lost my brain fart there. Burrows, I think that there is a chance that he could either be out wide or he could be in defence. So I think he could be, but it could easily be one that I change within a week.
Okay.
Or even now, as soon as we leave here, because you've got me doubting myself. But moving on to attack, we've talked about him loads. Alfie May, I just think there's no way that he cannot be selected for this team. Just absolutely guarantees goals, and I just think that he'll be, for most of the people that have selected him, he'll just not change throughout the season. He's my captain too. I'm backing him to get off the mark straight away. And alongside him, we've talked about as well, Jody Jones, just for the amount of assists that he got last year. I'm expecting another big year for him at Notts County.
Very interesting. Right, I've obviously got Alex Palmer in goal, same reason as you. I've got Mickey Dimitri, who we've already talked about at Crewe, just for the goal threat, basically, hoping they can have a similar sort of season as they did last term. And Sean Raggett, just because Steve Evans, Rotherham, dominant, clean sheets. That's what I want in my team. In midfield, I've gone for Tatsuhiro Sakamoto because he was on a brilliant run of form, and then he got injured in about February, March last season for Coventry. I think he's going to be starting on the right-hand side and produce a lot of assists and goals, hopefully. He's in midfield with Callum O'Hare. Again, I've explained my reasoning for having him in, but I feel like Sheffield United are going to be good, and he's going to be a major reason of their creative attacking force. And then Alfie May is my captain as well. I'm on the same lines as you. But I've gone for Latilaf at Middlesbrough because I think he's a Golden Boot contender. They've got Swansea at home, I think, is a reasonable opening fixture.
That's a very good first fixture,
as well. And I think that is where it's worth considering the fixtures. Maybe we have to be a bit more specific with our choices, given we can change it around so much. Maybe we should get the viewers to vote on who they think has got the best team so far, Conor, and see what they think. Because I think your Burrows shout is going to go down like a lead balloon. So he's coming out your team straight away. Yeah. But do get involved with the Sportsman League. Me and Conor will be in it. See if you can beat either of our teams.
Shouldn't be hard.
Shouldn't be hard. We say we're EFL experts, but potentially not. We'll get a few other names in there as well that you recognise. But that's it for our EFL fantasy episode of the Sportsman Untitled. And we'll see you next week for a championship preview, which you do not want to miss. See you next time.